Welcome back, Rush Hour Pod. I'm Jackie Chan. This is Chris Tucker with me. Oh wait, my bad. I'm TW. I got
I was
Justin
waiting. I
with
was
me.
waiting for at some point
It was gonna slip
to
up at
come
some
in with
point.
that. Yeah, it was going to pop up
Um,
at some point.
another busy week in tech, but I've been following your LinkedIn. I thought we'd kick it off today with a little talk of sick days. So your
Yeah,
post went a little viral. You want to jump into it?
yeah, for sure. So I had a viral post on LinkedIn this past week, and this is just another shout out. Check out both of our LinkedIn's. I try to share some interesting articles every day, and teed up from time to time. We'll drop some incredible gems on there as well. So that should be linked in the description or in the channel page. But there was this article, Business Insider article on sick leave, and basically Gen Z has been taking more time off, showing significant increases based off of data that came from Gusto and a few other kind of HR companies. That has been really growing since the pandemic, with more young employees not only taking sick leave but taking sabbaticals earlier in their careers, and it kind of shows the generational shift in work-life balance. Also highlighted a cultural shift where younger workers are starting to prioritize their health and well-being over traditional work expectations. And TW, you and I, I think, what would you're like Gen X, squarely within Gen X,
Yeah.
millennial. I think our attitudes towards work are kind of very different. So definitely seeing this whole shift, and also the impact of remote work, which has contributed
Yeah.
to the trend as well, with remote workers typically taking more sick time than those in the office, and flexible work environments encouraging employees to take time off, even though sometimes it leads to pressure to work when it's unwell. So I posted about the data coming in terms of this new trend among young folks, and I don't know if you have any of the comments up, Tina, but it
I read through the
resulted in some
comments.
yeah, it resulted
Yeah.
in some spicy combo about how
Yeah.
people perceive like taking time off and sick leave and generational divide. And so, I thought this would be kind of like an interesting way to kick off
Yeah,
today's
I'd
show.
love to get your thoughts on it, but I know growing up, like we've talked about it, I came from some immigrant household, and my dad made no excuses ever. He always went to work, and he was a professor, so it was definitely a white collar job. But I never saw him really miss work unless he was really actually sick. And like for me as a kid, it was also you go to school every day. I don't care if you're sick, you just go. So that it probably really influenced my sort of work behavior. When I got into the workforce, it was very much like work over everything. I'm prioritizing that, and I'll work through sickness, I'll work through being tired, I'll work through all of those things. And truthfully, I don't know what that got me. Like at the end of the day, other than saying that I'm not important, is the work, which is a really strange thing to say, but like, to me, it's encouraging. It's like an evolution in terms of, it's kind of like what we talked about last week with, I'm not going to put, yeah, I'm not going to put in 24/7. I'm not going to make work a priority if you're not going to pay me like a founder, right? I'm not going to act like a founder if you don't pay me like a founder.
Right.
And I think a lot of younger, especially post pandemic, have just said, you know what, like my health is important, and they've seen things happen, and maybe there is some sensitivity around just like coming to work if you're a little sick, and given how the pandemic turned out, that people are like, hey, you know what, I've got a little sore throat, I'm not going to give this to anybody in case it is COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I would be sensitive to that and not come in. So to me, I get it. I think it's a good thing, but it's also like, I know it's very situational. Like,
Right.
I'd love to hear in terms of like, how do you think about, when you call in sick, how do you do it? Like, what is your sort of, just for you personally? And then I'd love to
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
like how you think about your team.
For sure. So I think for me personally, I try to really only call in sick when I am actually sick, and it's more of a function of, I guess, what do I mean, I'm trying to be honest when I am sick to
Right.
like to say, and that I actually need the time. And then what I do, I think sometimes when you're sick, you can just like still be online and still be doing stuff like, because I don't take it super frequently, I'm offline and I'm resting in bed and actually
Right.
trying to sleep and doing that. And so that's typically how I think about sick time for my team. I'm never one of those people. Like, let's say someone on my team were to we call it out sick most of the time. Like, I generally try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're going through something, et cetera. As long as they're getting their work done,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily care as much. I know there are certain specific days that people actually can take sick leave. Like, you only get a certain number of days.
Right.
But if you people are requesting sick leave, I think it's important to be able to rest. I think that the work that you do for a corporation is important. You want to add value. You want to make your mark. You want to be progressing in your career, but you have to prioritize your wellness and your health.
Yeah.
And we only live one life. So I'm I'm never one of those people like, why is this person like requesting time off? What are they doing? Are they
Right.
interviewing somewhere, whatever it is? I'm like, all right, you sick? You need that time? You getting your
You
stuff
take it.
done?
Right.
Take the time, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I try to be like one of those. I don't know if you've seen the memes of on TikTok of like millennial managers where they're like always checking in on you and making
Yeah.
sure you're good, etc. I'm 1,000% that person. Those things make me crack up because
They,
I try to be really in tune with my team and try to you know make sure that they are aware that I care about them actually being okay as a person as well outside of just the work.
yeah, I like that. I think the and I've had this happen in my career where someone when something's due, when you have a big presentation, when you have things that are deadlines that are coming, you know, there's one person on your team that just, hey, I'm sick, I can't do it. Have somebody else do it.
Mm-hmm.
You see that repeatedly. Usually, those people end up leaving,
Yeah, for sure.
um, and it's just not a good fit. But yeah, like for the most part, I'm with you. It's just like, hey, I trust you. Like you develop a rapport with people, and generally, if you make your environment like relatively fun at work and you have a positive
Mm-hmm.
environment, um, people aren't feeling the need to bail all the time, or they could tell you like, hey, I'm scheduling a day. I need a day. I'm going to have a staycation kind of thing. If I
Mm-hmm.
need a mental health day or whatever it is, there's no judgment on my side. I'm like, take it. I'm with you. Take it. Take what you need. You
Yeah.
know what you need. You know your priorities. I'm not going to set them for you, right? If we don't get something done um, because of it, then we're going to talk about it. So I'm with you. I don't feel any type of way about people taking a bunch of vacation days. I think it's great. Just go ahead and do it. I look back on my time of
Oh man.
powering through all this stuff, and I'm like, man, what did that ultimately get me? I don't know. Other than me, like other people looking at me and being like, he's reliable, he's always here.
Yep.
Like that's good, I guess. There's value there, but it's kind of like it's not that.
Honestly, man, up until the last like 2, maybe 3 years, but really just 2 years, I haven't really taken all of the like vacation time that I need. I
Yeah,
know we're talking about sick time, but I'm just talking
yeah,
about like time off in general
yep,
now. I just didn't take it up. And part of me was like, okay, and you and I both worked at like startups and some early stage companies. I wouldn't necessarily put Twitch in there, but you're starting on a new team and there are kind of high expectations and you're in a managerial role and you have accountability to these, these VPs and these
yeah,
executive level folks. And I've just really had a difficult time turning off from
yeah.
that and being like, okay, well, if I take this time off, I'm just gonna be playing catch up the whole time. And additionally, maybe they don't think that I'm like
Bought in.
really the right person for
Yeah,
for the job or whatever it is. And that's probably part of my imposter syndrome, coming in as well. Like, okay, if I'm
totally.
not on all the time, then that means that I'm going to be on the chopping block, right?
Right.
And what I realized the last few years is, and maybe I'm a little more seasoned in my career, hopefully, more confident, also at companies a little later stage as well, which I think can be helpful, in terms of that. But that I need to prioritize my mental wellness, that I need to, in order to do my best work, I need to be like up to it. I need to
Yeah.
have kind of the energy, to do that. And if I'm kind of always working on 75%, that's not good for anybody. That's not good ultimately for the company. That's not good for me. That's not good for my family, et cetera. And so, but it's really taken a change, like a shift in mentality and a rewiring,
Yeah.
of my brain a bit to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I still struggle with that mentality in terms of like, hey, I'm just going to power through this. Like that. It's just kind of what like how I've always thought about it. But yeah, like since the pandemic, there have been times where I'm like, you know what, I'm not. I'm gonna. It's not that important. This is not. This is something else is more of a priority than work, and that's okay. Like
Yep.
you only you know that, and only you could balance that. And also it's about having trust in your team and understanding that they're going to get things done, and people are
Totally.
going to know. And if you set things up, you don't have to feel like that FOMO feeling of like, oh my god, if I'm not there, all this stuff's going to fall on the ground. And part of that is like you communicating properly and making sure people know where things are.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't do that, then it feels bad when you're out, because you literally have not informed people on what to do and updates on projects and things like that. So, but inevitably, things are going to be fine. Like ultimately,
I think that's the key right there is you have this kind of thought process in your mind where everything's not going to be fine. Like if I, take this time off or I'm sick, et cetera, some ball is going to drop, et cetera. And, sometimes the ball does drop, but in the scheme of things, if
yeah,
you're not kind of feeling well, you need to do that. And I think what's also kind of interesting, we kind of stay within the same topic, but pivot the conversation around, macro trends a bit more, and, what it means in terms of the generational divide.
yeah,
I think that there's something about, and maybe you kind of touched upon this a bit in terms of, your parents being immigrants and coming to the U.S. and being like, I'm coming here to get after it.
right,
Like that's the whole point of me moving my entire life to get here. And there's something about that American work ethos and culture of just kind of glorifying overwork and grinding out, and Gen Z having new attitudes about it. If you take a look at, for all of you who do follow my LinkedIn, take a look at the comments of this article. There's like a lot of kind of headbutting back and forth between
yeah.
people. What it seems like maybe older Gen X, baby boomer generation, and then those of the younger generation where,
And I also
yeah,
saw like, hey, I'm in Europe, and we don't look at
yeah,
work the way the U.S. looks at work. And it's okay to take those days versus, yeah, I mean, it is part of that I don't know, that boomer Gen X era where it was like, tough it out, too bad, you do
yep,
it, like I don't really care what you have company over you, get the stuff done. Yeah, I don't think that's we're in a time now where that's not a real nice way to handle things. Like
yeah,
as a human, treating people like human beings, like you just shouldn't do that. You should plan ahead and be ready for those times when somebody is out. Now, I get it. If somebody's truly taking advantage of it, there's probably another issue at hand, right? Like they
yeah,
don't like their job, they don't like their position, they're not comfortable, so they're taking a lot of time off. That's probably a sign for somebody. You
mm-hmm.
should be able to see that stuff coming, right?
Right,
And,
right.
and have real conversations about this versus just power through it. And I don't care. Like this just doesn't seem like the right thing to do at this point in time. But
Yeah.
I also understand it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
So where do you think things head from here? I think there are some things that are kind of pandemic era trends where some of them have kind of stuck and others have
yeah.
kind of gone back to pre-pandemic. And an example, so I was watching, I don't know if you ever watched The Daily, the New York Times podcast. It's
Mm-mm.
pretty good. They were talking about tipping and how like
Oh yeah.
people feel like you got to tip for everything now. And
Right.
and
It's like
and it kind of
Vegas.
happened during the pandemic, and people wanted to do right by service workers who didn't necessarily have the ability to kind of go home, and they want to support businesses and
Right.
made it feel good. And that's kind of like kind of maintained past that period. And then you have other things like fully remote work, which clearly that's not going to exist. I mean, well, it will always exist, but it won't exist. It won't be that everybody just kind of works, totally remotely. It'll be some mix of like of hybrid. But in terms of taking sick days or kind of the mental wellness thing around work, et cetera, do you think that that's something that will ultimately last past the pandemic era, or
I
do
think
you
so.
think we'll kind of revert back?
No, I think so. But I also think there is gonna have to be some sort of balance of our education around Like if you're a C student, you're gonna get C pay. Like
Mm-hmm.
let's keep it real, and see promotions and see everything. Like if you're like just getting to the finish line and you're taking a lot of days off and you're not really engaged and all of that, ultimately you're gonna feel that, right? In
Yeah.
both in your career and references and all of these things, you can't expect to be, hey, I'm going to take everything lightly. I'm not going to work with a bunch of urgency. I'm going to be, I'm going to come in late and leave early all the time, and then expect a promotion in a year or 6 months, or get a big title, or get a big raise, or get like those two things. Those two things cannot be in
Yeah.
balance. Like you need, like
Totally.
people are going to need to be have a real gut check here. That if I'm gonna be slacking off, not slacking off, I want to take this job very lightly and be a C student. I should expect the company
C
to
student
treat me as
outcomes.
such. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
maybe they need to hire two people, or maybe they need to hire two people with lower pay as opposed to one person that's an overachiever. And you got to be okay with that. Like I think that's where there's going to be a reset where some people are going to be more gung ho, be like, hey, I want to do this. I'm bought in. I want to go above and beyond, and they will stand out, and they will stand out, and the others won't. And I think that will be like a real
I
divide.
I agree. I think that sometimes when people have these conversations, there can be these kind of like views that feel like they're diametrically opposed, but they're not. Like you can prioritize your mental health and take sick days and make sure that like when you need the time, you take it and you're in a good place there and still grind
Right.
and get work done and still be productive as well. It doesn't mean, oh well, if I'm in this zone where everything has to be,
On your dime. Yeah.
totally like cool and good vibes the whole time, and it's never should be stressful at work, etc. That's unrealistic. But I
Right.
think that it is good to know yourself and know your mental ability to kind of be a good employee to execute well at a role that like being able to balance those things is important.
Right. Right. And it's one of those things you just need to have a pulse on it, like that. And I don't know if you've seen those little memes where like the worker says, "Sorry, it's after 5. I can't be reached. Like you
Yeah.
can talk to somebody else. Like it's not my problem after 5." And it's like just having some awareness, right? If you've got a big project and you know it's due dates, you know you need to get something done. Check your email. Be on it a little. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying 24/7. It's just like when something is truly important to the company and your team and
Yeah.
that thing, and to prioritize that when needed. I'm not
Right.
saying you always have to be on, but having the awareness of that is obviously important. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things, right? If you just don't care all the time and it's about you and how everyone's treating you, and you never prioritize somebody else, expect the other way around. Then
Yeah.
when the time comes for your paycheck.
100%. And I think it's interesting you bring that up because I feel like that's how I try to operate now as well. Like if I'm totally checked out the whole time, if I have a like I just couldn't do it because then it would just make me
Yeah.
even more stressed. And I wouldn't be able to enjoy the time off. So
Right.
I feel like you don't have to go crazy. And I feel like earlier in my career, I definitely went crazy. Where I was like always on, always checking, etc. But
Yeah.
just to make sure that you're good, that things are moving ahead. So when you get back
Right.
in the office, no balls are
You're
being
okay.
dropped. I think that's the
And
right approach.
it's kind of interesting. Like I've had this happen in the past lives where someone, well, I've had very frank conversations in my one-on-one. I was like, hey, what do you want to get out of this job? I'll support you in whatever endeavor you have. And the person said, truthfully, I want to start my own company, but I want a paycheck, but I like it here. It's comfortable. So I'm like, hey, you know what? Knowing that, how about I set up like let, this is kind of the C student route. I'm like, hey, this is what I expect of you to get these things done. You don't
Yeah,
have to go above and beyond, and you can concentrate on fulfilling, working, and do that at night and weekends or whatever. I'm cool. And then some time passes, and they're like, hey, I've been here a year. I've been here 2 years. Where's my promotion? Why aren't I getting a raise? I'm like, hey, you can't have it both ways here. Like we've
exactly.
set you up to be like this because so you can work on your other thing, Now, if you want to advance and you want a promotion and you want to get a raise, we have different standards for that. And that was very, I mean, I was, and that it didn't set for that person. They were just like, I don't get it. It doesn't feel
Mm,
good to be here 2 years and not get a promotion or raise. I'm like, well, we talk every week about this and your other
yeah,
businesses and other things. Like, how do you just can't have both. You just can't have everything. That's just not how this
yeah, it's not
works.
realistic.
And I think people are gonna have someone have that real talk with them. Otherwise, they're gonna live in this world of like, hey, I should I should do the minimum and get the most pay and get the high raises, and I should be, treated like a top performer when I'm not. Until that happens, right? I think people will just feel feel like all these companies are screwing me over all the time. And it's just
Yeah,
like not true.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a real gift that you had that transparency with that person because a lot of people would just be like, all right, this is they'll acknowledge that they're on that kind of like C student route, but they won't say anything to that person, and they have
Yeah,
unrealistic expectations, and then it kind of gets to that time, and then they're like, oh, what happened? But you don't like for them maybe even feels more difficult
yeah.
in that
Yeah,
time because they
because I
haven't
mean,
yeah.
truthfully, there's a dance that happens with your manager, in the in that you can't you feel like I got to be on, right, because this is my
Hmm.
manager. They're in charge of me. I have to like put my best foot forward. But like, if you really want to get to know the people, I'm fine with a for real conversation. Um, and a lot of that is me being vulnerable too and saying, hey, this is what I'm here for. This is what I'm trying to be, whatever that is. And it's like, hey, I'm not trying to climb the corporate ladder. I'm trying to get work done. I'm trying to make an impact, and that's it. Like, I'm not trying to be the next CEO of this place. It's not what I'm built for. I have a family. We talk about real life, and then it's like your turn to like, I'm literally telling you what I'm here for, and this is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
do, just so you have an idea. And like, I want to understand and help you get to where you want to be. If you are trying to say, I want, like, you can easily say, I want your job. I want to
Yeah.
work to get your job. What do I need to do to get that? I don't take any offense to that. I get it. Um, so then I just work with you on that. Or if, but there's a trust and a transparency that has to happen. And if you're like, oh, I'm not going to say anything to offend you. I'm just going to say, hey, I just want to do X, Y, and Z. Then that's what you're going to get, right? Like, so, and it is about having a person really in your corner that's going to think about that, and about you as a human being and what you want and what you want to
Yeah.
get out of your job. And yeah, you're probably right. That doesn't come. No one ever did that for me, which is why I always do it for people that report
Yes.
to me.
Yeah. I think you have to go. So there are some type of roles, especially if you're in like non-technical roles like us in marketing, where in
Right.
order for you to climb the corporate ladder in quotations, you have to start taking on, managerial kind of, people management type of roles. It's like you
Right.
just have to do that if you want to make money.
Yep.
And then there's like different classes of people. There are people who are like, I need to do this in order to just get more bread. So like I'll build a team, but I don't necessarily enjoy doing the
Right.
people management stuff.
Right.
And then you have other people, which I think is more aligned with like you and I, which is okay, yeah, this is going to give me more money, but also I really like doing this work. I want to see people succeed.
Right.
It gives me energy. It makes me feel good about what I'm doing when I'm able to pull other people up. And that like I think yeah, that's kind of like the type of persona that I think is the best for people leaders and to just drive great outcomes, which kind of ties back into all right, well, you're talking about sick days or everything else, just leaning to on those things, empathizing with them, bringing the human aspect to work. But yeah, if you're kind of on the other side, that it could be a little more difficult to
Right.
kind of go into all those conversations and navigate that if that wasn't your kind of core intentions and
Right.
being
I
able to
think,
manage a team.
and I think, again, full transparency on my end. I think the hardest part for me on that is when the other person truthfully doesn't know what they want, and that's real. Like, there are times in your life where you're just like, I don't know, man. I want to get more money. I don't know if this job is, or this journey is for me, and I don't want to be truthful in that sense. And I can see that, and that's difficult, right? Because they're like, I'm not sure if what I want, and so I can't even tell you. You can't even help me because I can't help myself, like,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know, and like, I've seen that a bunch, and that's really hard. Like truthfully, because you're like, all right, well, here's what in that case, here's what we need from this job. Where do you want to fit in? They're like, yeah, I can do it, and then it, like they're some days they're engaged and other days they're not, and it's kind of like there's a delicate balance, and that's where it gets really hard, because then you're
Yeah.
not sure, like that person isn't sure and you're not sure uh, what to do with them. And I think that's the hardest part for people like us who are like, I want to help you, but you kind of have to want to help yourself and
Yeah.
know what you want. And there are times where you just don't.
Yeah. Maybe to
Truthfully.
kind of crystallize the conversation, there are different ways that you can kind of navigate work, whether it's taking sick time off or how much intentionality you're putting into your work or your goals, et cetera. But there's going to be consequences either way, right? You
Right.
really put in, your best effort forward, and you try to be transparent and you try to get stuff done. You're probably going to have better outcomes. If you're just dialing it in, you may not kind of climb the ladder, as quickly as you want to, or get the kind of opportunities. At the same time, you may not necessarily be optimizing toward that, and that's
Yeah.
okay as well. But you should know that how you position yourself, things you do, et cetera, will impact the outcomes, and just be okay with that either way.
Yeah. And if you're like, hey, I don't have any conversation with my manager about this, set up some time. Like truthfully, some people get in their own groove and they don't know to do that. So you could just say, hey, I would just like to talk about my career or where I'm going and what I want, and set up if one-on-ones are very tactical for you, you may want to set aside something for that kind of conversation, so
Yeah,
that
that's
they can mentally prepare for the thing. You can put in notes like, hey, I just want to make it clear, this is what I want out of this job, this is where I want to go, this is where I see myself. If you don't have that relationship with your manager, maybe find somebody else in the company, or someone else that you maybe can connect with, and ask how
yeah.
they can guide you to that. But that's probably the best way.
I love that. Actually, I want to give a shout out to a former manager of mine at Discord, Cherry Park, who did that very explicitly. Like there would be time for us to have our regular one-on-ones, and then there would be a separate time that's just kind of more around like career and asking
Life.
questions and just
Yeah.
figuring out, hey, what do you want to do within the
Yeah.
context of your time here and in the future? And that was really meaningful to have that time. And I think to your point, it's helpful if that's differentiated, right? Because there's like the very tactical things that you need to do to get done on a weekly basis to accomplish, team goals and OKRs, et cetera. And then there's how you want to grow in the role and how you want to move to, adjacent opportunities or outside the company or whatever else you want to
Right.
do. Having the dedicated time for that
Right.
is really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, set aside. I know it's tough. I've been at really small startups where it's go, 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 and there just never is a time to do any of that stuff, and that's sad. But I get it. When it's that way, you just need to make the time and say, hey, this is what I want. This is not getting me there, or you just need to have that conversation. As
Yeah.
difficult as, and part of growing up is having these difficult conversations, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to be real about it, and it's not fun sometimes. But it's ultimately going to help you grow. Even if you stumble through it, you're going to be like, all right, you know what? Next time I'll do this. Next time, it's like anything. You kind of iterate and learn.
You wanna jump into some news from the week,
Topical, yeah. Let's
some
do it.
topical stuff. Cool. So our man still raising that money, man.
Yeah,
So OpenAI is reportedly in discussions to secure funding from a bunch of investors at a total of like 100 billion, at a valuation of 100 billion. This would be an increase of the prior valuation, which I think was around 86 billion rather. You got Thrive Capital putting money in, Microsoft, Khosla, Infosys, Y Combinator. I think maybe Apple and Nvidia joining in
yeah.
as well. This would be their largest capital infusion since Microsoft's investment of 10 billion
Wow.
in January of 2023, and they've had pretty impressive revenue growth during this period. I think annualized figures for what was shared in the article, 3.4 billion, but on track to lose nearly 5 billion by the end of the year, having already spent 8.5 billion on AI training and staffing. So raising a lot of money, crazy valuation, doing well, still operating at a significant, loss, still, like I said, investing into the business, but
Right.
and spending a lot of money on training and staffing. But man, that is a crazy valuation, and in such a short period of time. Any kind of thoughts on AI wave overall or open AI
I mean,
specifically, or
I
yeah,
still feel like it's really really early in this thing, but
yeah,
they do have an incredible leg up. Like they're the equivalent of Xerox and Google and the Chat GPT. That's just what people think of a lot of times. They think of AI. Um, so first mover advantage. I assume there is one, especially with the amount of funding they're getting and talent
yeah,
they're acquiring. It just seems like they're on a path here to being the sort of benchmark for AI, but
yeah.
I, I don't know if that's going to hold up at the end of the day. Like we're entering a new era of technology here. So,
Hmm.
but I feel like they're the ones to beat, right? They're the ones to
Oh,
chase. They're
100%.
yeah,
What do you think is like the end game? Because I thought, at one point it was very clear that it was going to be like a Microsoft acquisition at some point, like
right.
either either in a short period of time or maybe in a few years. But you got all these other players who are investing in them, like Nvidia, Apple, and it's made me take a step back and kind of try to figure out like what is the ultimate outcome
Yeah,
that's going to happen here. Do you have any thoughts about that, or like where it's going to end up? I'm a bit more
I
puzzled
don't
at
know
what that
either
looks
because
like.
I think about that too. I'm like, wow, they're kind of playing every angle here, right? Like they're building this incredible like B2B network, right? Like where Apple and Nvidia and games and everyone needs to use their AI, and others are developing on their own. So it's kind of hard to tell. They seem to be playing everything at the moment, right?
Yeah.
It's just like I'm going to be B2C with ChatGPT, but I'm also going to be B2B and enable Apple on the biggest platform, empower their technology. So it seems like they're just going to try everything and
It
iterate
does
and see
seem
what
like that.
works.
It does seem like they're trying everything, but it also, I mean, there's definitely a strategy. There's definitely a strategy in terms of like the partnerships and
Yep.
how they're ingesting data and who they're working with, aligning with these big publishers, et cetera. I think there's a clear strategy, but there's also like, hey, we can just try to grab everything, and there isn't really
Right.
another
And see
player.
what
And even in the
works.
incumbents are flat footed right now. This is just
Right.
our time to just for it all, and
I
it
think
seems
I
like they're
mean
doing that.
my guess is they have Chat GPT that's B2C and they're seeing and I've heard sort of anecdotally that retention isn't great. There's this big top of funnel and then people don't come back. People don't actually use it regularly. So then they're like, all right, how do we get this product in front of people? And now it's like Microsoft and search and getting
Hmm.
an Apple and they're trying that next layer. Like, all right, we got to get, how do we get more everyday active user, and that's like getting into the default settings of devices, which I think is incredibly powerful. And like first step, Apple is a big one, right? I'm assuming the new iPhone when it comes out next month will have some real, I mean, AI built into it.
Yep, that's the plan.
Yeah, so like they're step one, and then them working with Nvidia and putting it in games and things. Interesting. Like I feel like they're going to be there to figure out what is the next step, and
Yep.
and they're going to continue to figure out and build this Chat GPT as a brand. Because truthfully, I don't think the average person uses it. Like, if you're a hardcore, yeah, but like my mom, my wife, my kids, like most people are not in tech, are probably rarely using it.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's okay if they don't necessarily know the brand, if they're having these partnerships and it's being
Yes,
integrated into kind of the existing stack of other
right.
companies, right? Like Apple is clearly caught flat footed, in the AI
Yeah.
race, which is like crazy to think about, honestly. But I think that seems to be the consensus now. And why else would they be partnering with OpenAI? And so I think basically what I'm trying to say is I think it's going to live in the background of a bunch of other experiences,
Yes.
and you may not even necessarily know that you're using ChatGPT, but you will be. And so ultimately, maybe that's like a play that works for them long term.
Yeah, and I think the muscle memory right now for users is like Google search, right? You go search for something, either Google or YouTube or wherever it is, you search for the thing.
Yep.
And then the other one is algorithm, TikTok. You log
Mm-hmm.
in and the algorithm feeds you what you want and you kind of discover and find
Right.
things there. Entering a new world of where you need a new muscle is just seems like it's going to be really hard.
That is hard. Yeah, that is hard.
Because you're like, now it's like, oh, let me go ask ChatGPT this, and it'll go do all these things for me. Where I mean, it could be done, but I think you're right. It needs another form factor and another way of
Yeah.
thinking about it. Because truthfully, you think regular. I mean, I'm talking regular non-tech employees. You're talking waiters, waitresses, small business owners, drivers, whatever. How often are they going to use ChatGPT? Like as it stands today,
Yeah.
it's just like I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think. I'm trying to think about. There was a there was this semi-viral post that went out. I think it was on Twitter, and had someone using Claude to build out a bill splitting app in real time, and it took like 2-3 minutes. Did you see this? Did you see that
No, I
video?
haven't
Do you
seen
haven't
that.
come across that? So I think like for it to be adopted by consumer, it'll be maybe something like that that's kind of powered by ChatGPT or one of these other platforms where it like really kind of gets mass adopted. There's gonna be like some killer use case where people are using it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
it's
think you're right.
it's not there. It's not there yet, but it's gonna be under the covers, I think.
Under the covers, kind of like TikTok, where it's like the TikTok algorithm is just incredible, right? It just
Yep.
has so many sort of tentacles, and you log in and it just shows you stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and based on your watch time, what you like and share, and it just like triangulates and gives you more and more. I think, yeah, there's going to be more of that in other ways, which I don't think we've seen yet. So it'll
Yeah.
be fun.
Well, in other founder news, the founder of Telegram, CEO and founder Pablo Dura, was arrested by French authorities in Paris. I think he's like a French and UAE citizen, but originally from former Soviet Union, and he was arrested because um, I mean, French President Emmanuel Macron said that it wasn't politically motivated. At the same time, kind of Russia is pushing it back, is back against that. But essentially, the charges that is allowing for nefarious activity to happen on the platform, it wasn't working with authorities, and more and more details are coming out. But I think, and there's an ongoing criminal investigation. But I think the very interesting thing that's happened here is the ability for kind of governments to go after the CEO founders of these companies and arrest them and have
Yeah.
charges. I think hypothetically he could go to prison for like 10 years based off the charges or something like that. What's to stop them from going after Zuckerberg or Elon
Yeah.
Musk or anyone else? And what does this look like into the future? So what do you any initial thought? Like, did you have any initial reaction to hearing the news, and maybe other thoughts after you've taken the
My
time to
initial
process
reaction was Telegram arrested. That checks out, but
it?
because there's so much, like,
Fair
it's
enough.
funny when I was in the sort of the crypto space, everybody was Telegram and everyone was anonymous, and everyone was like, be careful, things happen on Telegram where they hack your accounts. So
Yep.
there was always this like, you're one step away from 4chan and like the most terrifying things in the world when you're on Telegram.
Yep.
So it's not like, part of me is like, yeah, it's not surprising, but like also I went the same place you went. Like, this is scary because you're not far from companies being, starting a, like you said, you start a little AI, you build something on AI and you build the thing, and then you're arrested because someone else is using it for nefarious purposes.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really
Feels like a slippery
possible.
slope.
Yeah,
It does feel like a slippery slope. At the same time, listen, if various things are happening. Child trafficking, other weird, not good stuff, black market arms dealing stuff, and it's impacting the lives of real people. I can understand that. That's where the gray area comes
yeah,
for me. But I wonder, how on the open, like if you have an open internet, which generally we do, or at least in most countries you do, then how can you kind of go after the founders of these companies, just realizing that these activities are just going to kind of happen, regardless. And to take this type of action may result in like they're going after all. Then you kind of have carte blanche, maybe to go after all founders of all companies for kind
yeah,
of whatever reason. Maybe argument can be made there.
yeah. I mean, the
So that
devil's in
that
the
feels weird.
details.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
devil's in
yeah.
the details.
It's like really understanding like where the evidence is here, and like we don't have that, right? If they've done some real deep diving and they've seen that the CEO saw these things and either it really enabled them, or made some serious decisions to not stop the nefarious activities, then maybe they are liable. Like
Yeah.
that's a different story, right? It's kind of hard. Just from the outside, high level reading it sounds scary. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you're gonna arrest the guy for things that are happening on his app. Like that's
Yeah.
wild.
I think what's interesting, maybe taking a step back, is it kind of underscores the growing tension that's existing between kind of tech platforms and global governments
Right,
over, the last kind of 5, 10 years now, where
right,
there's been a shift from tech is great and it's going to change the world for the better and it's all going to be, really positive, to tech is kind of an enemy and it's
right,
disrupted many areas of society, from
right.
politics to mental health to financial markets, everything else. And there actually should have been way more guardrails up. And now we're playing crazy catch up. And now we're just like going after anything that has anything to do with tech, because we don't necessarily think of it as a force for good now.
Yeah,
And that shift has been really interesting because I think it's happened in a relatively short period of time.
yeah, and a lot of it is, I don't want to say ignorance, but just lack of knowledge, right? Like you just don't. I watched some of the hearings with Zuckerberg, and some of the questions were just
Yeah.
re- really made you wonder. Like,
Very meme worthy.
yeah,
Very
it's
meme
just like,
worthy.
how did you get to your position and not know this? Um, but like it, part of this is part of the growing pains, I guess, of things moving very quickly in technology. And like we said, the average person is not caught up to this stuff. Like they're not. We're
Yep.
in it every day, and we're trying things. We're like building on top of each other and understanding one thing or the next. Whereas the average person jumps in, isn't on Facebook, isn't on social media at all. This stuff's gonna be tough to follow. Like you're
Yep.
gonna come in and be completely lost.
Yep.
So yeah, we're in a weird place to say the least.
Yeah. So speaking of being maybe in a weird place, or where things are evolving very quickly, the last part of topical news that I want to talk about was this new California state bill that was recently, I think it's going to Governor Newsom's office to be passed now, but it talks about unauthorized use of AI replicas, in terms of usage of like likeness for actors and other people who are in the entertainment space, and giving them more protections in terms of how they're using video games or audiobooks, commercials, things like that, even covering non-union work as well. I mean, you can look every day with these new platforms that are being created with kind of digital likenesses and
Right.
replicas, and how it's kind of skewing the lines between what is reality and what's not. But there's the other part, which is around compensation for people who kind of made it their life's work to entertain others and have very unique voices and very distinct personas, and wanting them to be credited for that work and also be able to monetize that down the line. And so it kind of speaks to this continued grayness
Yeah.
that's occurring within the space, and how you treat art and the creation of art at the same time, making sure that there are protections and loyalties and fair compensation for the people who are creating it. Yeah, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but I think this new legislation is
Yeah.
really
No,
interesting towards that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, brands and people are now brands, right? IP is now, you as your personality is a brand, and how you use it and how it's perceived can affect your bottom dollar. And it makes sense to have this. It's just weird. That's all. I'll put it like that. Especially like you think about people that have passed away and things like,
Yeah.
like bringing that quote unquote persona back, and it's kind of double sided, right? Like you could use it in great ways or horrible ways. Like the Tupac hologram, or like you could see that as great or horrible.
I was about to say,
Depending
what do you think, that was great or horrible?
I mean, it's kind of cool, I guess, as a showcase of technology. I don't think it did any harm. I don't think it
Yeah.
did any harm on his brand or his likeness, but I could see someone being like, "That's not cool. Like, who gave you authorization to do that?"
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, who knows? Like bringing somebody back that's been gone, you could see the positives and the negatives from something like that.
Yeah,
Um, so we'll see. I have no idea where we're going with it, but it'll be
I
fun to
know.
follow.
Well, so like using our own like podcast as an example of that, how would you feel if our family had rights to kind of like reproduce this podcast
When
in
we're gone,
indefinitely when we're gone, and use all the trading data from everything we've said and text
yeah.
messages and other videos, et cetera, just kind of keep it going indefinitely and apply our thinking to topics in the future? How would you feel about that?
if it's our kids that are in control, I'm fine. But if it's YouTube that's in control, like that's
Mm,
not fine, right?
yeah,
I think it's all about that piece, right? If it's like your family and your brand is being controlled and passed down in an estate, and they make those decisions, makes total sense.
yeah.
But if it's like, hey, I'm trying to, I'm HBO and I'm trying to bring back Curb Your Enthusiasm and I'm going to do it all with AI, that seems not good. Like,
Interesting though, because like, what if your family was given some type of significant royalty, right? Saying, "Hey, we're going to continue to reproduce this content," but maybe it may feel a little weird, but at the same time, you knew that your family and them financially and your legacy, they'll be good
better off
forever because
as long as they
YouTube
have
is
a
now
say in
producing
it.
this content. Okay, as long as they have a say, that's
As long
fair.
as they have a say in it, I think I'm fine with that, right? As long as they can decide yes or no, and not just get a royalty check because somebody who knows what is using this doesn't seem right. But
Yeah.
that will be something that has to pass. And then like there's international law. You're talking just on the state level. You're talking
Yes.
internationally, and then this is the internet. It could be anywhere. If you're not in the state, like how do you fight? Like wow, it's a lot. It's a lot to unfold with that
Yeah,
and unpack.
being in the legal profession right now either feels very daunting or very exciting. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah. You
where
say there's
people
so
end up
many
there.
lawyers in the world. There probably aren't enough for what's about to happen.
Yeah, but what is happening for
Yeah,
sure?
for sure.
Yeah,
This is very very scary times. But appreciate your time today. I think that's it, right?
yeah, man. I think
I
that's
think
good for
we had a good
everyone.
run.
Yeah, appreciate the views and definitely like and subscribe to the content if you're enjoying it and if we could be helpful. Absolutely, continue to reach out.
And also, we're gonna have
Yeah,
some guests come on. We've had a
we're
bunch of
gonna do the
people
guest.
reach
Yeah,
out. We're gonna figure out this guest pattern. We've got a bunch of storylines we're kind of gonna play through. So make sure you subscribe and like and give us some feedback in terms of like, hey, what we're like non-technical people in tech, and we're trying to like expand on that a little bit with like people who've come from different industries into tech or vice versa, and understanding their take and their sort of journey and path. So that should we hope it'll be fun for everyone to hear that. We think they're great stories and great people. So
yeah.
more regular people, not necessarily celebrities and all stars, but I think it'll be great for people to hear.
No, I think we got a great lineup planned ahead. So excited to have those conversations and try the interviewing kind of format as well. I think that'll be
Yeah,
really interesting and fun.
yeah, that'll be fun. All right, Jess, have a good long weekend.
All right,
See you
man. You
next
as
week.
well. Later. See you next week.